Before we start this episode of Doctor Who, I just wanted to make a quick announcement that next week there will not be a new episode of Doctor Who Classic. That's because we're basically going to be taking a week off at Thanksgiving, which is weird for us to think about because it's only November the 12th when we're recording this, but with how everything lines up, that's just how it works. So, we will be back in 2 weeks with the first 3 parts of The Invasion of Time. So, yeah. And yeah, that's pretty much that. Hey guys, Alex from 7th Hour Films and Dad, back again with Doctor Who Classic. See, I've thrown myself off completely. Last time on Doctor Who Classic, we had the Sunmakers. What was that one about?
The Doctor and Leela and K9 landed on Pluto.
Yes.
And someone had taken over the planet Pluto and had created artificial suns to keep Earth-Terran society going or something, but it was very structured, and there was this guy who was literally like the world dictator called the Collector, and he had an underling, very well played, very sardonically played, the Gatherer, and then a whole bunch of elites, and then a bunch of workers, and it was all about overthrowing him. And it turns out that the guy who was in charge really wasn't from Earth at all. He was some kind of little squid or something that they literally flushed down a toilet at the end. But a very interesting take on the socio-economic things, not only in Great Britain at that time, but things that have been happening in the United States, also in the mid-1970s and so forth. But overall, a very enjoyable, it wasn't the greatest story in the world, but it was very enjoyable because of the performances of the actors who had been cast in those various roles.
Yes, that was pretty much that. I was going to say, I hope you remember, because we only recorded that last Monday, so... but yeah, that was pretty much far and away the Sunmakers. So today we are on to Underworld.
Now, we were speculating, I think at the end last week, talking about this, was this like, the Mafia, or you mentioned something else? Was it the Michael Sheen isn't there a set of movies called Underworld or something like that?
I doubt I referenced that. Maybe you referenced that.
But after we left, I got to thinking, as much as we love the historicals, wouldn't this be great if it went back to like ancient Greece? Because there's a whole story, not only of Hades and Persephone, and the changing of the seasons, things like that, but there's another story, and I can't remember exactly how it goes, but there's a man named Orpheus whose wife or fiancé, lover, something, is taken to the underworld, and he actually goes down into the underworld to try to retrieve her. And I can't remember if that's connected with the Hercules story or not. Again, it's been years and years since I've taught Greek mythology, but I just remember that story of Orpheus in the underworld. So that would be cool if it's that, but I don't suspect it is, because it said something about landing on a spaceship crewed by survivors of... Anyway, so...
Yeah, so whatever you think the story will be, it's probably not that. So, I'm just going to assume that they are flying directly south of a planet, specifically, and thus they are under a world. So...
You do realize, of course, that Australian maps, I've seen that, I don't know if this is actually true, but in Australia, they tend to orient the globe with Australia at the top, even though they know that's south. We're just prejudiced because we live in the northern hemisphere and we think of the North Pole as being the top of the planet. But quite honestly, the South Pole is the top of the planet as well.
Yeah, so it's all... that's what happens when it's all a nice big sphere. It's a sphere, folks. Try to remember that. I say that, I doubt there's any flat earthers watching this.
Oh, let's not get there again.
Yeah, so... for anyone wondering, because we have said the word world, I will not be putting in too many JoJo clips every time we say world, because that's what I did. You don't know this yet because you haven't seen the Sunmakers video yet, but pretty much when you said the world, that's I put in a clip for JoJo that only I think one person understands. So
and it isn't me.
It's not you. So, But yeah, I guess that's pretty much it, unless you get anything else.
I got nothing.
Then why don't we just go ahead and get into Underworld. Here we go.
Well, a long while since we've had a one-word title.
Well,
Floating through the cosmos. And then the cosmos disappears? What's going on here? Wait a minute. There they go.
Yeah, I was going to say, pan left a bit.
We're on the edge of the cosmos, the frontiers of creation, the boundary between what is and isn't, or isn't yet anyway. Do you think that's interesting?
I suppose so.
What?
I thought you weren't supposed to be here.
It's magnificent. Any minute, any second, a whole new world could be born, and we'd be the first...
We are not the first.
Shh! We'd be the first intelligent and semi-intelligent beings to witness this fate.
We are
Oh,
not alone.
That's 100,000 years old. The minion civilization was destroyed 100,000 years ago. On the other side of the universe. Gave them medical and scientific aid, better communications, better weapons.
What happened?
Kicked us out at gunpoint. And they went to war with each other, learned how to split the atom, discovered a toothbrush, and finally split the planet.
So this ship
In that
must
order.
have got away before the planet was destroyed.
Take her off the flight deck! Yes, sir.
So K9 got over the doorway there?
yeah, off screen.
Are you a Time Lord?
Yes, I'm a Time Lord.
Lies, all lies. He said he was a doctor.
Off.
Thank you, Wolf.
God, we need that on Twitter.
So you did develop the pacifier.
Very few, and too late.
How long does the effect last?
Is she a primitive?
Oh, very, very.
Well, several hours then. A ship of ghosts.
So the Time Lords gave them the power of regeneration. That sounds like a bad idea.
Wild, warlike, aggressive, and tempestuous, and bad-tempered too. Yes. You're a warrior leader from a warrior tribe. Courageous, indomitable, implacable, impossible.
Right, that's far enough. You stay with...
Put it away, you're pacified. Pacified. What's the normal hull thickness?
3 meters 20.
K9, present hull thickness.
Hull thickness 70 meters, increasing.
70 meters?
We're being turned into a planet.
But that's impossible.
No, it's not impossible, Jackson. It's simply gravity. The ships are large, heavy objects surrounded by smaller, lighter objects. Our gravitational pull is greater than theirs. We attract them. They stick to us. It all snowballs.
80 meters, increasing.
We're being buried alive.
Oh, this is the Underworld.
We're melting our own hull.
Eric, keep on.
It's no use, the cannon's disintegrating.
Alright then. Man, they keep giving us lore about Time Lords. So they were very early on, found these nice people, helped them a little too much, gave them weapons, toothbrushes, regenerations, and then they kicked them out. That's the strangest of all of it, which I like that informs the non-interference policy, but the fact that they apparently gave them the power of regeneration is also weird. And they can... It sounds like there's no limit on regenerations either. When they've established by now, I think it was in the Deadly Assassin, that a Time Lord can only regenerate 12 times. So, unless you're tricky about it, like most Time Lords on this show are. So yeah, it's an interesting start, and alright, I will give credit to the title. We are under a world, so and honestly, the whole thing of the minions going through space and finding nothing and trying to find the one thing, I don't know, it reminds me a bit of some sort of, and the whole thing with the quest, it reminds me of some sort of ancient mythology or something.
Yeah. Again, speculation here. Going back to the Greeks, the island of Theros was where the Santorini volcano was. That exploded, giving rise, in a lot of people's opinions, to the story of Atlantis, because there had been a civilization. Oddly enough, the Minoan civilization, right about the same time or just before the Mycenaeans, or the Mycenaeans, depending on how you pronounce it. So, I mean, this may have a very kind of vague connection to the mythology. But again, it's very, very subtle at this point.
Yeah. Well, and honestly, that would make sense because of how they're tied into the Time Lords. I could see them also sort of referencing a lot of mythology with that, because they are keeping the Time Lords, at least right now, they're keeping the Time Lords very mystical and even otherworldly for, all the other worlds we've seen, too. So.
Blast a tunnel and blow our way out on ion drive. Tala?
Almost looks like she had a cell phone there.
Yeah.
That's the B-70.
Captain, the fuel's going.
What do you mean? That's the planet.
That's where the signal's coming from.
Where?
Right in the middle, a planet formed around it.
Now we have to go under this world.
6, 5,
Hold tight.
3,
Tight?
1, 0. Stand by for impact.
Oh.
R1C to P7E. R1C to P7E. We must be right on top of it.
Oh, how long have they been in this planet?
Skyfall on 8, and a Trog making trouble.
Many dead?
Not enough. There were 2 more bursts yesterday. What we need is a good sacrifice. Trogs always work harder after a good sacrifice.
I'll take
Troglodytes,
a
no doubt.
patrol out.
I think this is green screened.
Yeah. Which is weird. You'd think they would have an abundance of caves. Ooh. It's more of a George Lucas green screen effect.
Yeah.
They've planned it out and it's elaborate, but it's all still green screen. Into the laundry.
Stop Trog or I'll fire!
Hey, who are you?
Stop Trog!
Don't Trog me, you!
Shield gun.
Out there? You'll suffocate!
Get into the command deck.
Yes.
He's literally carrying him.
Whatever blows can be sucked.
Reverse the polarity.
Alrighty. Well, you certainly, I mean, just from the moment you see them running and saying the sky is falling, it's like, oh, I get what this place is all about. So, I guess they must have been there for 100,000 years, or at least some of that time, to think that this is all there is in existence. So,
But the father knew that there was something above the rocks.
yeah. So,
Now, that may have just been, lore passed down from generation to generation.
yeah, maybe. But it's definitely also leaning into some of that Greek mythology with the oracle and the gods and stuff. So I can see, based on where they started with the minions, that where their influence is coming from, but also in space and Time Lords and such. So it's interesting.
Now, the Great Oracle was at Delphi, which was on the mainland, but I'm sure there were oracles on Minos or Minos, however you want to pronounce it. Again, different pronunciations from different groups.
Yeah, so, and we are no stranger to different pronunciations of things, so. Alrighty, part 3. And I just noticed, because for some reason I just now looked at the dates, that we should be into 78 by now, looks like.
I was going to say the spaceship looked somewhat influenced by Star Wars, but that was that 77 or 78?
It was 77.
Okay, so... And, I mean, it's not an incredibly advanced design, but it's very similar to other things from that time period.
Yeah.
So the graphic there, the visual, leads you to believe that it's a heavy gas, and therefore you could theoretically just simply get high enough up to not breathe it in.
Well,
And is he using the sonic screwdriver?
I think so.
Not making any noise, though.
Can be sucked.
Thank you, Master. Round up the slaves to watch the sacrifice.
Man, the show has ruined the word master, because now I had like 3 different thoughts. I was like, no, it can't be him.
I wonder where it all went.
So are there any trees on this planet?
The stars really exist then?
Of course they do.
And that is not the sky?
That is the roof.
Roof?
Yes.
See to it, Tarn, or you will be next.
Yes, Master.
I find your lack of faith disturbing.
Well, you know, now that I think about it, really did sound like him.
Revolution! Waited us! Has no one ever thought of revolution? Has no one ever rebelled?
My father did.
And
How many revolutions can she start?
She's got a printer?
There's a map of the tunnel. K9, find Jackson, bring her back here, and follow us. Off you go.
Retrieve and follow. Affirmative.
It's a good thing it's not like a really slow printer, too.
The tree. We call it the tree.
Tree at the end of the world. Where are we?
Here.
Where's your father?
The restaurant at the end of the universe.
Nah.
Must have been interesting for them to do half of the entire 3 episodes so far on green screen.
Yeah. Maybe they were experimenting with this one.
Take patrol!
Hell?
Alert!
Yeah.
Alert!
Oh, do it again. Yeah, I think they were just experimenting with green screen stuff.
Oh, looks a lot like the original ship.
Oh, yeah.
They are full of fear. It shall be done.
Sword of Damocles.
why go to so much trouble?
Intimidation. More ritual and mumbo-jumbo, the greater deterrent. That's the whole point of official saving.
I like that term, official sadism.
The shoulders on these guys, very much like the original Romulans from Star Trek.
Yeah. Well, they got some industrial fabric going on.
Yeah, it's not a very sharp knife point. Or sword point.
Hey!
You call this a rescue?
Goodbye and good luck!
Goodbye, Eric!
Horatio at the bridge. Blast the bridge.
Good. Not dead yet.
It's not dead yet.
Take him inside for
I'm feeling better. You're not fooling yourself.
Everybody here, except us, comes from the same stock as Jackson and Company.
Same stuff.
Yes, how else do you think they got here on the middle of a new planet?
I don't know.
They're the descendants of the people who came on the P7E. Jackson's probably Edith's great-great-great-great-great-grandfather a few times back.
Great.
Yes, don't worry about it.
And they're that old because they keep regenerating.
The servants of the Oracle, seers of the realm of Hedis.
Okay.
Well, I wasn't expecting that. All right, then.
All right. I have to say, it's. I'm enjoying the story. It's very slow paced. I'm not saying that the whole thing could be cut down to 3 episodes, but they could have put a little bit more in. I mean, let's face it, the walking of the slaves, that may have only taken 20 seconds, but that's 10 seconds more that was needed. And there's, I don't want to say there's padding, but there's some lengthening of sequences where they had a 3.5 hour story or a 3.5 episode story, and they're trying to pad it out to a 4 episode story.
Well, other than that, it is still an interesting concept and everything. I don't fully understand, though, the evolved minions, but
maybe they will explain that in the last episode. But yeah, how? Because they appear to be cyborgs of some kind.
Yeah. And it's just strange because they showed the one guy in the back, and he was just a normal guy without the helmet and everything.
Yeah.
But then they take it off, and they have the full thing, which is interesting. Which I guess is still based on the minion helmet, because that's what Jackson and the others had too.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's interesting. I still am also confused on how they have the power of regeneration and the fact that they can do it so much as well. So, because I kind of keep forgetting that, Jackson and the others are 100,000 years old.
But they don't regenerate into a new being. They simply regenerate their old self. So maybe that's the difference.
Maybe.
They don't do because the doctor said, hey, I've done it a couple of times and it's very painful, or he said it's not pleasant, whatever.
Yeah.
But they seem to be able to simply regenerate their own bodies, and maybe that's the difference.
Maybe. So, yeah, it could be something like that where a Time Lord's regeneration completely alters the body from head to toe.
Yeah.
So, yeah, could be something like that.
Now, Ulysses, who is also Odysseus, if I recall correctly, doesn't seem to fit into this pattern anywhere.
If the Doctor's plan works,
Well, it's my plan exactly, but it has worked before. A fellow called Ulysses pulled it off a little while ago.
Oh, okay. Trojan horse.
Well, and he was there.
But I thought Ulysses was the Roman version. Odysseus was the Greek version.
Well,
100,000 years of searching, General. There's no stopping us now. I smell victory.
Smells like napalm.
What they want does not exist.
The Oracle will know. Why should we destroy each other?
One is taller than the other.
Very well.
Well, there are 2 of them. Solid gold, stamped with the mark of Minius. The length of a man's hand.
Good.
Tell Rask to arrange a truce.
well, until he said the thing about the hand, I was going to say, it's them.
Yeah.
Can it be done?
Cannot all things be done?
You think the Oracle is just the computer?
Maybe.
The quest is over. The quest is over. At last.
Alright then. I guess we just head out of here.
What do you make of these?
Ignition grenades. What?
Jeez.
You, take care of him. And make sure you finish him off this time. Then bring this lot back to the Citadel.
You're making a terrible mistake. Those are the wrong ones.
You can do better than that, Doctor.
They must never leave my keeping again.
Don't worry, they won't.
Quiet! Sit down, everybody, sit down. Stay very calm.
Outer section sealed.
The people all said, sit down. Sit
Follow
down,
on
you're
drive.
welcome.
Drive running.
Pressurize. Check. Prepare to blast out. Right down. Right down.
Just ride the wave out. Ew.
Sludge.
Aren't you coming with us? I mean, us too.
No time. I'm very busy. Goodbye, Jason. Goodbye.
Boy!
Jason.
Jackson.
Is Jason Jackson?
No. Jason was another captain on a long quest.
I don't understand.
He was looking for the Golden Fleece.
Jason and the Argonauts.
Did he find it?
Yes. Perhaps those myths are not just old stories of the past, you see. Prophecies of the future, who knows? What do you think, K9?
Negative.
What did he say?
Negative.
Negative. Can he paint? Negative.
Negative.
Alrighty.
Right, so
Underworld.
not specifically Orpheus descending into the other world, but a whole lot of other Greek mythology mixed in. I can see the Jason thing at the end, Jason and the Argonauts, because they were after the Golden Fleece.
Well, yeah.
Which, by the way, if you've never seen Jason and the Argonauts, it's a early 60s or mid 60s film, I think. But Ray Harryhausen, I think, did the special effects for that. He was the big special effects guy back in the 60s.
Well, it's an interesting thing because we always talk about doing more historicals. If you're not going to do that, this is pretty close, honestly. Yeah. Adapting those myths to space, basically. So, and this kind of gives off, was it Planet of Evil vibes, where it's like there's the planet at the end of the universe and stuff.
Yeah.
So, it does kind of remind me of that a bit. Just without the infections and werewolves and such. The only thing, I assume that the Oracle was just the ship's computer.
Yeah, that's one thing that they just did not explain.
Yeah, well, that one at least, I can infer that it is the ship's computer. Yeah. That's all fine and good. The evolved minions, though.
Yeah.
I don't get that. Did they just... I don't know, I can't think of it, because these minions... They are at least different from the crew that we had because they don't regenerate. Yeah. So I don't fully understand how, unless it's something to do with the race bank that they were somehow the Oracle was somehow able to evolve them, but I'm not sure.
Yeah. Again, they appear to be some form of cyborg. They're part human and part machine.
Yeah.
Which would be, I guess, a relatively easy way for the Oracle to have at least a small group of elites who can then control the seers and the slaves.
Yeah, so... Alright, so we had the boundary, or the end of the universe, basically, which was an interesting idea, and is funny because you joked about that when they were showing space and they just kept going and then just nothing was there. So that was an interesting idea, and again, sort of reused from Planet of Evil, where it's like, well, it's the edge of the known universe. They haven't created anything else that far out. But the minions have found their way there after 100,000 years, which, at least according to their technology, it takes them 100,000 years to cross from one end of the universe to the other end.
Now, there's the unfortunate thing nowadays, of course, because of the silly animated films. Whereas minions, we're now assuming is part of the Minoan culture. Minyan sounds like Minion.
Yeah.
So these are the minions of the Great Oracle. I don't know.
Yeah.
And sadly, the two guys, when they took off their hoods, kind of look like the minions.
Yeah, they do, don't they? Yeah, they've got this sort of tall, sort of rounded head with the weird eyes and such. Yeah. That is unfortunate. Minions have ruined that, so... but yeah, so it's interesting stuff, though. And we also get a bit more... Again, just a bit more lore about the Time Lords in Gallifrey, which is interesting. It's interesting just how much they are sort of revealing about the Time Lords, but at the same time, I still feel like it's very myth-like. I mean, obviously just from the minions in this one, but just from that, it's like it's still very fantastical and everything with the Time Lords, even though we've had episodes where it's like, well, here's the Time Lords, here they are doing stuff on Gallifrey. They're not quite the forces of nature that we saw in the War Games anymore.
It makes me wonder if somebody is finally, after, 15 seasons now?
Yeah.
If somebody's saying, you know what, maybe we should write some of this crap down. You know? To look at, how Roddenberry had laid out the world of Star Trek and how George Lucas was trying to lay out the world of Star Wars. And we keep hearing about all these other science fiction, like Blake Seven and things like that, that finally somebody at Doctor Who says, we've been on the air for 15 years now, and we have all of this crap that we've talked about, and it's never actually been put down in one place so that we can then go on from there. And it strikes me that somebody's finally saying, you know what, if we're going to stay on the air, maybe we need to get some continuity going here.
Yeah. Well, and especially, too, just because of... because this is 1978 at this point, so Star Wars had just come out, and in that original Star Wars movie, nowadays we have everything with the Jedi, and we've seen the Jedi Order extensively in the prequels and Clone Wars and stuff like that. But back then, when it came to, all right, what is a Jedi? It's Alec Guinness in a robe, and it's like, okay, but the way he talks about it, even though he thought it was crap, but the way he sells it, because he was a good actor, he sells it of like, yes, back in a more civilized age and stuff, and I had my apprentice, your father, and he was killed by Darth Vader, I swear, and so you take that from a certain point of view, and so you take that where it's like it very much is just this mystic sort of thing, especially with the Force. It's like, okay, so here's this. There were these people called Jedi. They were like these, monks or something. Maybe that you can kind of get that. And so now it feels like the writers were like, okay, we kind of have that, because even though we've been going on far longer than Star Wars, we've been going for 15 years, and where Star Trek, it's like, well, yes, you have Captain Kirk, but you have a bunch of other captains. We have one guy as well, the Doctor, and yes, he is strange, and we have been watching him for 15 years, but nobody still like quite knows who he is. Even the audience is like, well, he's a Time Lord, but he can change his face. He's got this, incredible intellect, but he's also kind of arrogant about it and stuff. And so now they're taking that, and it's like, okay, the Time Lords, where does he come from? But how do we say that in a way that's still mystic and mysterious, which fits in with his character?
Yeah.
And it is one thing, a complaint I've heard about later seasons, and then also into later seasons of modern Doctor Who, when they basically start demystifying the Time Lords a bit, and we've seen the Five Doctors, where it's like, well, yes, just go to Gallifrey, here's the High Council, which I guess we have seen some of that in The Deadly Assassin, but it was still, I don't know, there's still something mystic about it, like with what we heard about the Fendel, what we hear about Morbius and Karn and all that stuff. So it's just sort of an interesting idea now, seeing, the minions, who were from a very early point in the Time Lords' history, where it's like, oh, well, we were just figuring out space and time, and we were all a bit hot-headed, and we went in and we helped them out. And then they split the atom, made a toothbrush, split the planet, and then they kicked us out. So, and then just seeing all of that come full circle, but also it's like, well, the Time Lords were these mythical gods to them, so they kept up those mythical, that mythology all the way to this planet here.
Now, of course, today, and I'm not saying they would do this in Doctor Who, but today a lot of the science fiction followers would say if the Time Lords realized how they had messed up the minion civilization, then they could have gone back in time, like Marty McFly, Doc Brown, and prevented themselves from interfering with the minion civilization.
Yeah, I mean, it is such a difficult thing about that, because especially if you're just starting off with Doctor Who, with the modern era where he has control over his TARDIS completely, and it's like, well, if this doesn't work, why can't you just go back in time and make sure it does work? Like you said, Marty McFly or Bill and Ted or something like that. And it's like, well, like they try to give reasons as to why the Doctor can do that. It's like, well, in fact, there's an entire episode that deals with that, where it's like one of his companions wants to go back and just to see how their father died, but accidentally went in and changed that, and they accidentally like loop back on themselves, and then you get time demons and stuff. So they do try to explain early on, like, well, he can't just pop back in the TARDIS and fix everything, and presumably that's the same thing for the Time Lords dealing with the minions. So it's an interesting thing, and then the whole thing with the regeneration. I think you're right that it's just the minions sort of take on regeneration. It's not really a full regeneration, but it's just a sort of renewal of the body, which is what it was at the beginning for Hartnell to Troughton, was that he was just making himself younger. And back then it was possibly thought like, oh, this is a function of the TARDIS, until they eventually wrote it to be something the Time Lords can do. So, because you know me, every time there's something Time Lord related, I'm putting it into context of stuff that hasn't happened yet, So I'm putting it into context of like, okay, so they have regeneration. Did the Time Lords give them that power? Why would the Time Lords give them that power? That's their special power that they got, and there's this and that, and the Timeless Child and all that, and it's like, okay, stop. They can regenerate themselves. Moving on,
You're about to show me the shadows of things that will be in the time before us. Is that not so, Spirit?
Yeah.
It's one of my lines.
Not quite the line that it should be, I would imagine. Yes. So, anyway. I feel like they made a big point about the pacifier and didn't do anything else with it. Like, they had that, and it was like, oh, okay, so this is an interesting thing, and it was like, okay, it's kind of funny how, like, out of it Leela got because of it. And it was also, I don't know if funny is the right word, but it was interesting just how mad she got when she realized that she was pacified. But then they never brought that back. And I was like, well, okay, I understand the purpose on this. These 4 people have been on this ship for, 100,000 years, so they might need something to cool tensions every so often. But yeah, it was just kind of a strange thing to have and then not bring back.
Yeah.
So,
because they could have used that on some of those guards, those black-robed, black-hooded guards.
Yeah. So, and then we had everything with the Skyfall and the Trogs and the guards and the Seers and such. So, all of that was interesting. And yeah, I would imagine, like you said, that the Trogs probably are based on the word troglodyte. So, unless it's a future reference to Trogdor, but I don't think it is.
No, there was a British rock group called the Trogs, whose, if I recall correctly, I think they're British, whose biggest hit was the song Wild Thing. So, but yeah, again, Trogs comes from troglodyte, meaning somebody who is not incredibly intelligent or advanced as far as a society, a civilization.
Yeah. Now they go into the whole thing about why they're doing all of this. Like they get the rocks to throw into the crusher, which processes the rocks into food, so they keep doing this. But what are they doing exactly? Like, you have this entire workforce, but it doesn't, like, I guess it's kind of pointless to ask, what is the function of all of this, especially to the Oracle computer. But I guess for the Oracle, because it is just like, seems to be the ship's computer that's just, gone off the deep end over 100,000 years, that it's like, well, what is the purpose of this? The purpose is that we do it. Well, why? Because we have to. Because there's no other way around it. We just have to keep doing that.
And again, there are several stories from the 60s and 70s in science. I think even Star Trek did one where society is being controlled, and in order to make sure that the society doesn't get out of hand, there's like a single night where there's a purge and people are allowed to kill and do all this horrible stuff. And they literally want to do that because they have never lived any other way. And when the Enterprise crew ultimately frees them, they said, now you're on your own. And they're going, what do we do? And they said, well, you have to learn how to live together. You have to learn how to build society and so forth. And that's what's going to essentially happen here, is they're getting rid of the control unit, the Oracle, and basically now they're going to say, hey, we all have to learn how to function as a group, rather, all of us semi-equal, rather than the Oracle way up here and the Trogs way down on the bottom end of the scale.
Yeah, which honestly is also a sort of take on what was it called? It was Leela's first episode with the Face of Evil. That was it. Where it's it's these people who have been here for so long that this is just how they've evolved. They just think this is the world, and you have the whole thing with the computer and the Tesh, and then you have the Seva team, which are the more savages because they went out to explore the planet. So it is honestly very similar to that, which kind of makes it interesting that they never reference that in this episode. So, but yeah. Now, in all of the stuff, like, I understand, you have the crusher, you have the tree, which is just, the tunnels and stuff, and you have the Oracle, which is the computer, and you have the Seers, who are, one step below them, and then the guards, and then the Trogs. Who made the sword? Where did the sword come from? Because you have to have a very specific purpose to make a sword. If it was just like some weapon, or even if it was just like a block that you drop on people.
Well, the Doctor appeared to make it sound like it was the key.
Yeah.
But again, why specifically does the key look like a sword?
Yeah, because even with this whole thing of, these people, and they believe in this mythology and stuff like that, having something like a sword still doesn't fit into this environment of the ship that is, stopped here and formed this planet over 100,000 years and stuff. Yeah. So, yeah, it seems very strange, even though it does have its purpose. Like, okay, I get why it has its purpose in the ritual and stuff, and then it's used as the key. But why is it's just a sword? A
little bit more background of the Minion Society before they left Minos, or whatever they called it. That would have helped. And that brings up basically what I was going to say. My biggest problem with this serial, with these 4 episodes, is the fact that all of these serials are now either 4 or 6 episodes. We don't see it. This one could have, to fill out the 4 episodes rather than some of the padding that they did here, give us a little bit more background on Minos. Or cut it down into a 3 episode. The fact that they're locked into that 4 episode structure is what causes some of these stories to suffer. Now, I'm not saying it was bad, but again, they're forcing the writers to write to a specific time length. And again, having been an author, been a playwright, and when somebody says to me, I need this to fill an hour and a half, it's like, I can't write for an hour and a half. I've got to write the story, and if the story happens to come out in an hour and a half, that would be wonderful. But if it comes out to 2 hours and 15 minutes, that's what it comes out to.
Yeah. So, because especially pretty much since how long have they had this sort of format? At the very least, this has been the case for most of Tom Baker's era, and this is our fourth season with him. And yeah, they've had this where the first 5 episodes, or the first 5 stories, are all 4 episodes long, and then the last story is 6 episodes long. And yeah, back in the day when it was the second Doctor or the first Doctor or even the third Doctor, it was kind of all over the place. It's like, well, we have a set number of episodes, but we'll see who needs how many episodes for each one. And sometimes there were even occasions where it's like, well, this one has 3 episodes, this one has 5 episodes, or whatever. So
wasn't Marco Polo like 7 episodes?
Yeah, the original Marco Polo was 7 episodes,
and Edge of Destruction was only 2.
Yeah. So, and I know there was one. I'm trying to remember, there was one that was 8 episodes. I think it was like the invasion or something with the Cybermen on Earth.
Wasn't the chase?
The chase was 6, I think. But then you go all the way to the end of the second Doctor's era, and then you get the War Games, and that was 10 episodes. And weirdly enough, for being 10 episodes, it deserved all 10 of those episodes. So it is just sort of a strange thing. Whereas now, you're right, and it is maybe slightly the thing we joke about, where it's like, well, they come up with a title, they have like a whole thing of like just various words, grab a couple title, all right, go write a story, you have 4 episodes, but some of it could be that. And especially with right now, where it sounds from the comments, it sounds like they're shifting around who's in charge and stuff like that. So it could be that not everything is lining up perfectly.
And you're saying that, talking about randomly picking something, what if they had structured this along the lines of the Hades and Persephone, that literally the cylinders were what was causing, the planet to be dying, because they needed to be above the ground rather than below the ground, because Persephone, when she's down, her mother, Demeter or Ceres, I can't remember what her name was in the Greek, causes the earth to go into fall and winter, and then when Persephone comes back above ground, then it's spring and summer. So that you could literally tie in a story, and then your oracle becomes Hades, trying to keep it his my precious down there below, under the underworld. So, I mean, there's plenty of stuff that they could have done. I'm not suggesting that this story wasn't good, but if you're going to go with the mythology, I mean, there are so many wonderful little things they could have done with that. And again, that would have helped explain who is the Oracle. Well, the Oracle's a stand-in for Hades. What are the race? What were the race banks? So just something like that.
Yeah. It honestly also makes me wonder if the novelizations are better, because at that point you do have the entire book to explore everything you need to. And because I gave you, I guess last year I gave you the novelization of The Reign of Terror. So I don't know, what did you think of that? Did it sort of do that, just extend it a bit?
It did, especially I thought for Ian's character, it certainly fleshed him out a lot more. But the rest of it was pretty much standard, very similar to exactly what happened in the serial. But it did, again, yes, in that instance, allow for a little bit further character development, because you hear what's going on inside their heads.
Yeah, that's true. So yeah, it's a good episode.
Yes,
definitely. But we always see how it could be better, basically. So, which is probably infuriating for some people watching, and that's okay. So, the biggest thing for me that it's like, okay, what was going on here was the evolved seers, like, which I guess, because we said that they could just be cyborgs created by the Oracle to, have a sort of buffer between the Oracle and the guards. But still, it's just sort of a strange thing, and also just the fact that, which, I mean, I guess, how long have they been here? Because it took this minion ship 100,000 years to reach the other side of the universe, which, good job. I don't know how you did that, but you managed to get to the other side of the universe where you're at the edge. There's nothing except this new, nebula that's forming and creating a new solar system right here. But then there are these other minions who must have been here a long time for nobody to remember how the universe works. Yeah. And to only think, when they say the sky, they're just looking at the ceiling, So, with only vague myths about stars and everything. Yeah. So,
maybe the Seers were, if we're going to go with the whole mythology thing, maybe they were the demigods. The product, theoretically, of the mating of the gods and humans. And in this case, the Oracle, which is a machine, has figured out how to combine part machine and part human as the go-between with the Seers and the Trogs.
Yeah, so...
maybe we're overanalyzing this.
Maybe. It's our job. It's what we're paid the not bucks for, so...
Yeah, you're getting some bucks.
A little.
I don't get squat, but you get some bucks.
Exactly. But yeah, that's what we do every week when we sit here for 2 hours and talk about Doctor Who. So, but yeah, you got anything else?
I got nothing.
All right. Well, like I said at the beginning of this episode, we will be back in 2 weeks for, what's it called? The Invasion of Time, which is our 6-parter to round out the season. So yeah, we'll be back in 2 weeks for the first 3 episodes of that. And then we've got 1, 2, 3-ish weeks, and then we'll probably take another break at Christmas too. So, but then after that, go straight through for the year. But anyway, but yeah, that is basically it. With all that being said, we're Alex and Dad from 7th Hour Films, and we will see you guys next time. Take care. Alright guys, thanks for watching this video. There's a bunch of links on screen if you want to go click around any of those. There's a playlist for all of our Doctor Who classic reactions, as well as another playlist for all of my modern Doctor Who reactions, if you want to go check those out. There's also a subscribe button and a Patreon button on screen, as well as other links in the description if you want to go check out any of those. See you guys later.